So for our concept development, I'm going to be using this template right here. And you should have this template as well in your books. And it shows Mr. Hahn's data, his class data for straw lengths. And it provides us with a line plot template. So we're going to be using this data to represent Mr. Hahn's class using a line plot. First, we need to determine the scale for our line plot. And remember, our scale is our numbers, right? What's our distance between each number? And we are going to be doing that by picking the smallest measurement in the chart as our first measurement. So again, the smallest measurement is going to be how we start our line plot. And if we look at our data here, which one is the smallest measurement? Well, it's our 2 3/4. So, how to grab my pencil? We are going to mark on this side 2 3/4. That's our first point. And now, what do you think our last measurement is going to be? So if our first measurement is our smallest number, then what's our last measurement going to be? It's going to be our largest number, so that's going to be 5. Okay. Now, let's look over the data chart. What do you know, or how do you know what interval we should count by to create our scale? So what interval should we count by to create our scale? Go ahead, pause the video and think about that now. So let's think through this. Counting by whole inches is the easiest, but it does not allow us to plot all of our numbers. The data has numbers with whole inches, half inches, and quarter inches. So while going by halves is easiest, if you notice, we still have quarter inches in here. Right there, right there, right there, so on and so forth. So we need to have our scale go by quarter inches. So to find out how many tick marks we need, we can count by fourths from 2/4, 2 3/4 to 5. Each time we count, keep track with your fingers. So what we're going to do is count by fourths. And instead of, you can use your fingers, and I'm going to be using our marker instead just so that I can keep track. So we start at 2 3/4, and then we have 3, 3 1/4, 3 1/2, 3 3/4, 4, 4 1/4, 4 1/2, 4 3/4, 5. So now we have our 9 tick marks, but what did I miss right here? Well, I missed our first mark, 2 3/4. So we always have to remember to count that one as well, because those are definitely intervals on our line. So now that we have our 10 tick marks, we know that we're going to need that same amount here. And again, we still count the 2 3/4 and the 5. So I'm going to move this over a little bit so you can see it. All right. So when we're doing this, we got to remember that 2/4, because as we were counting, you might have said 2/4. 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2, right? Because if we were to draw this out here, we have our fourths, 2/4, so 1/4 plus 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. So when we're doing this, we want to make sure that we say 1/2 rather than putting 2/4. Okay. Now on the template, we see the chart from our application problem, like I was saying before. And now we're going to need to partition our number line into equal intervals on here. So equal space between each tick mark. And so after doing that, we're going to need to label our scale. Okay. So I know that I'm going to need, if we look back over here, this is 2 3/4 and this is 5. I know I'm going to need 8 tick marks in between them. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put 2 like right here. Let's see. I think that's an okay distance. And then I'm going to need 3 on this side and 3 on this side. So and that's kind of okay. Let me redo this one. This one's a little too close. And it's okay if you redo them. It's not going to be perfect right away. You can always erase and redraw them if you need to. So that's roughly okay. And now that we've labeled or drawn our tick marks, let's label them. So again, we're going to go through and we're going to say 2 3/4, 3, 3 1/4, 3 2/4, which is the same as 3 1/2, 3 3/4, 4, 4 1/4, 4 2/4, which is 4 1/2, and then 4 3/4, 5. Okay, cool. So we have our tick marks, we have our scale, and now let's plot the data set on the line. So we're going to plot what's in our table, and we're going to be putting it on the line over here. Okay, so now that it's time to record the data on our line plot, let's look at the first measurement in the chart, 2 3/4. Where do we see that in our table? Well, it's right here. So this is our 2 3/4. And let's plot that by making an X over here on our line plot. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's think about a way that we can make sure we only plot the data once. So I plotted 2 3/4, and to make sure that I don't go back and plot it a second time by accident, what can you do? Well, you can circle it saying, okay, yeah, I've done that. You can take a different color and you can like highlight it or underline it. So for right now, I am just going to circle it and say, okay, yeah, I've plotted that. So let's plot the rest of the data with care, either crossing or checking off each one as you plot. And let's just go ahead and do that now. So let's look for our 3s. We have 1, 2, I think we only have 2. And we can always go back and double check afterwards. For 3 1/2, let's see here. Or sorry, 3 1/4. This is 1, 2, 3 1/2 now is 1. Okay. 3 3/4. I see 1, 2. 4 is 1, 2, 3. 4 1/4. 1, 2. 4 1/2. 1, 2, 3. 4 3/4. 1, 2. And 5, 1, 2. Great. And I know that I've done all 20 because all 20 numbers are circled. So now that we've done that, let's give this line plot a title that tells us what it shows. So when we look at our line plot here, what is this data actually showing us? Well, I know that each one of these numbers represents straw lengths in inches. And each one of these X's represents one straw. So as our title, we're going to put straw lengths in inches. All right. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and we'll label the bottom of this so that our readers know what these numbers are. And these numbers are the inches. But we're not quite done because we still have to label, well, what are these X's? So we're going to make a little key. Our key is going to be down here. And I'm going to say that an X equals one straw. So each X equals one straw. Okay. So now that we have our line plot, we have our title, we have our label, we have our key down here. Let's answer some questions. Let's say one of our questions is, how many straws were at least 4 inches tall? So how many straws were at least 4 inches tall? So at least means including 4, because at the very, very minimum, they're 4 inches. And so let's count to see how many straws were at least 4 inches tall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's 12 straws that were at least 4 inches tall. Well, now I want you guys to answer. You're going to have to pause the video to answer this question. How many straws were taller than 3.5 inches? So how many straws were taller than 3.5 inches? Go ahead, pause the video and answer that now. So to find out that answer, we want to find all the straws that are taller than 3.5. So we're not going to include 3.5 because 3.5 is not taller than 3.5, right? But 3 3/4 is taller than 3.5. So let's start at 3 3/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there was 14 straws that were taller than 3.5 inches. And last but not least, which measurements happened most frequently? So which one of these happened most frequently or occurred the most? Go ahead, pause the video and find out now. So it's really easy to see which ones occurred the most frequently because they're the tallest. And we see that 4 and 4.5 inches, those are the two most frequent lengths.